Hi, everyone who's arrived already. Waiting for a few more people. Martha, it looks like you're upside down. There you are. All right, Lisa, can you help me figure out who all we're missing? I thought I saw this. There's Misty. There's Katrina. Yeah, okay. Let's see. So we're missing Suzanne. And Lisa, did you hear from L'Oreal's house? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Okay. No, I didn't hear anything from Lori at all. I didn't hear anything from Suzanne. I didn't hear anything from anybody.
Okay. So let's see, Suzanne, Lori. Do we have a quorum on the city side?
Yes.
And do we have one on the county side?
No, not even close.
Bummer.
Only two. Who is his 551?
His 551.
That's what it says. It's got an H on it.
Martha.
Martha. Okay, so that helps us. And then there's just a phone number. 906-7804.
That's the public, right? No.
No,
that's
because
Jenny.
Oh, that's Jenny Jones.
Okay.
It's Aaron.
Okay, Aaron, that
Oh,
helps
it's
us.
Aaron. Oh, there's Aaron.
That helps us. We need one more.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? We can at least handle the city. The city can make decisions and vote. We at the county will just listen. So welcome everyone. Hope all are doing okay. Let's see. I'll call the meeting to order. So at least for the city side, can we proceed with approving the agenda and the consent, both the agenda and the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda. This is Aaron.
And I move to second it. Thank you.
Diane seconded. So all those on the city CPMT, all in favor? Just put up your thumb. Any opposed? Okay, great. All right, we still don't have a county quorum, right?
I'll have to look.
See, we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's what I have.
And what we need 5?
We need one more, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, we will not approve the consent agenda on the county side, but we can go over provider revisions. Katie, where's Katie? Katie, do you want to review the city provider revisions?
Sure. I don't know if folks want me to go through them or if there's just any questions. The one from Grafton is pretty much what we see from them every single year. The other Keys Academy, I think, really had to do with COVID and them feeling like they needed to put something in their agreement for that. And then the IRC, I understand, are some similar revisions we had with them last year because, you know, they're grant funded and they have a lot of mandates that they need to make sure that they're following. It's not like they're just a private agency. So those were things that their attorney asked to be included.
Does anyone have any questions for Katie?
Katie, were these reviewed by the city attorney's office?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we always have them review them before they come to you guys. In case there needs to be any kind of negotiation back and forth.
Any other questions? All right, can we go ahead and proceed with approving the city provider revisions?
I move that we approve the CSA provider revisions for the city of Charlottesville.
Have a second?
Aaron seconds.
Oh, Aaron seconds.
Aaron seconded it, Lisa.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Yay, Lori's here. So the county has a quorum. All right, so let's go back on the county side to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes and the financial reports. So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda from the county?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Any second?
Second, this is Aaron.
All right, Aaron seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. And so now let's go to the county provider revisions. Jennifer?
Yep. So we had two. One was keys, which is pretty much the same thing as what Katie already said for the city side. And then the other one is for kids piece. And so that one I just sent out because foster care was looking to possibly make a placement there. And so they had one change. And apparently it has to do with the fact that they're a national agency. And so they were addressing the issue about not being able, that they have one rate sheet and they were saying like they can't do that nationally. So that was the one change. And so the county attorneys reviewed both of those and has approved them.
Okay, do we have any questions on the county side? All right, can we, someone make a motion to approve the provider revisions for the county?
Motion to approve. This is Aaron.
I can second.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, there we go. Okay, Jennifer, why don't you go first to give us a county fact update?
Sure. So I actually talked to Cheryl. We really don't have much of an update at the county. Things are just continuing to do well with parent participation, even though we're doing this through Zoom. And so otherwise things seem to be going smoothly.
Katie, on the city side?
Yeah, I think we have a pretty similar update. Things seem to be going pretty well. Like I mentioned before, I think meeting virtually has allowed for some efficiencies and some greater participation in FAPT, which is really nice. But yeah, everything's going fine.
Does anybody have any questions for either of our wonderful CSA coordinators? Okay. Do we have any questions or comments regarding any routine foster care expenses and the FAPT approved expenses?
Actually, I do. Wait a minute.
Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Yes, I was just curious. with the COVID-19, the world that we live in, are we seeing things, what's the changes, if anything, that you're seeing or not?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes is probably just service provision, how, the providers are delivering services at this point. That's by far been the biggest change. And then, I think now sort of as schools starting back up, folks trying to figure out while their children are attending school virtually and they're working, just again, I think sort of a shift in what the needs are. We're seeing a little bit more of that now.
Yeah, I know in City FAPT, we've seen a lot of, parents and family members who have lost their jobs or cut hours due to COVID, and it's really having an impact on their financial stability. And so I feel like we're seeing that obviously a lot more than we normally would, and trying to provide some more material supports to help for the time being so people don't lose housing or are able to, be able to supervise their children with school being out.
Do we have any kids placed in a jurisdiction that actually went to in-person school?
I can't speak for DSS. I would assume that we do. Because I think like Orange and Green and Louisa maybe are all doing in-person school. So I'm sure we do.
A number of the surrounding jurisdictions are doing some version of in-person learning.
Mm-hmm.
Several of our private school placements are doing, like VI is doing in person, and some of the others.
That's right. I have heard from our foster care supervisors that sorry, my phone is ringing. That there have been some challenges in finding placements for kids, particularly if the kid, adolescent had been on the run and there was any concern about possible exposure. So that's been a challenge.
I know last week or the week before at FACT 2, somebody mentioned that they thought we would see a lot more energy, I guess, at the beginning of the school year from foster parents in terms of, I need a plan for this kid. I need a plan for this kid if they're not, going to be going to in-person school, but that it seemed like all of that was kind of not as big of a deal as they kind of expected it to be. So I don't know if people are just like planning ahead or, foster parents are staying home with kids. I'm not really sure, but I think folks were worried that was going to be kind of a big problem at the beginning of the school year, but it wasn't as bad as they thought.
Thank you for asking that, Lori. It's good to get an update. Anyone else have any questions or comments they want to share? All right. I'm getting called from Teams and my phone and everything. Everybody wants me. All right. CSA coordinator update. Jennifer and Katie.
You skipped the OCS communications.
In my agenda, that comes after CSA coordinator update.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a whole lot. They just sent out registration for the CSA conference, which is going to be all virtual this year. So if anybody's interested, you don't have to go anywhere. And I'm assuming that you can pop in if there's certain sessions that you want to attend versus attending the whole thing. So we have that coming up. There's really not a lot of other updates that I have. I don't think, Jennifer, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I'm trying to think. Well, I guess the only other update I would add, which is sort of hot off the presses for us, is I've gotten feedback from our risk manager for the county and from the county attorney regarding the general liability, because we had some outpatient providers who had decided that they are going to remain virtual as opposed to maintaining an office.
Like
And so there was-
forever, like permanently?
Yes, that's their plan. And so they were asking about whether they could drop the general liability since they no longer have an office. And so the feedback that we've gotten is that requirement would remain because it covers more than just like personal injury. And so when the risk manager for the county looked at it, they both agreed, the county attorney and the risk manager agreed that that's a requirement that we would maintain. So if we have providers that are asking about it, then the feedback is that we are still going to require that.
Have we gotten any feedback from those providers who have asked about that yet?
So the one has said that they let their policy lapse, so they're going to be renewing it and then sending it in. So I haven't, their agreement's not approved at this point.
But they've agreed to go ahead and get it.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So I think that's pretty much it for updates.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, now OCS communication.
So I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at it or if there are any questions about quite a few memos that they put out.
I was interested in the one about the protected funds because I'd never really heard that term before. And I'm not sure I quite understand what the memo's trying to say.
Yeah, I think there was a conversation a while ago about non-mandated funds and how some localities use those and some localities don't, and what exactly does it mean, and when would you use them and when wouldn't you use them. And so I remember at some point they were supposed to send something out clarifying some of that, and I don't know if this was an attempt to do that. I do think it's a little confusing.
So you're suggesting that when they say the term protected, they're really talking about the non-mandated.
That's what I kind of got from it.
Yes.
Okay.
I think part of it was some of the other localities were, because it's considered non-mandated, they didn't want to use it, and they were thinking by relabeling it that it might incentivize those jurisdictions to start using those funds.
But both of our jurisdictions use those funds, right? Not the same amount, but yeah.
Right.
Martha, I'm just curious, do you have, in your other jurisdictions, do you have jurisdictions that don't?
Yes. I have a couple that don't use it, Goochland and Culpeper, but the other jurisdictions do. I mean, some of those have much smaller amounts, but all the other jurisdictions do make use of those funds. And I think the memo is probably kind of following up on that survey that SLAT did. I feel like that's been about a year ago. I have copies of it, but I haven't looked at it recently. But there seems like there's a very determined plan to change the use of the language. I feel like OCS has been pretty clear about that at SLAT meetings, which are still happening, but are happening virtually at this point.
Now I understand better. So I was just curious if we had any feedback about the new guidance document on utilization review. Have we seen that new document? Jennifer, Katie, do you know? Has it come out? Well, it says it's releasing it.
Yeah, the document was attached to the memo.
Oh.
And so we can forward that. I looked over it briefly. I think, maybe the three of us Jennifer, Cheryl, and I would have a conversation about, I think like we're in pretty good shape in terms of kind of what the guidance document details that your UR should include. It's pretty broad, but I think, you know, I would like for the three of us to get together and just go through it and make sure, especially with us both having audits coming up in the next couple of years. And that's, you know, just making sure that we're kind of meeting those basic guidelines that are in that document. Or if there's anything that we need to enhance, and especially, you know, given that every services are being provided virtually now, you know, just to talk about the document itself is kind of what I was thinking we would do with it.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we met with Region 10 to kind of just review our UR, and it may be worth sort of revisiting our local policy and using this document and having that meeting with them again, just to see if everything still feels like we're in good shape.
Right.
So, yeah, it might be good to, at a minimum, share it with Crystal, right? The guidance. Okay, anybody have any other questions or comments regarding any of the memos from OCS? All right, Jenny, would you like to give us a program committee update?
Sure. We met for the first time at the beginning of this month, and we really spent most of our time talking about how each agency is really providing services to clients and really updating each other on how that was going and what the challenges have been so far. And then for just kind of like our focus, we just wanted to see, because we met before school actually started virtually. And so we really wanted to see what that was going to look like, because I do believe even though we have some youth in the outlying counties, I would say the majority of the youth that we serve are in the Charlottesville Albemarle school districts. So are going to be experiencing virtual school for the first time, and parents are going to be having to figure that out. So we really wanted to kind of see what that looked like and see what type of supports we may need to provide or kind of troubleshoot around after that. So that was really the focus of our conversation. We did want to check in with CPMT though and make sure there wasn't anything that you guys felt that during this particular pandemic time that we needed to be focusing on.
Anybody from CPMT have any thoughts?
Overall, we definitely discussed how services were being delivered, and surprisingly well at times, given the situation, and that we were overall pleased with like how things were going with our particular vendors and services. Of course, as Katie and Jennifer already mentioned, you know, the pandemic has brought on, you know, definitely a lot of needs for material support. So that has been, I think, a big focus of the DSS agencies. But that was pretty much like our discussion.
Any questions or comments for Jenny? Or requests of program? All right, thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we wanted to take an opportunity to present an updated information about our measures on the accountability tool. And so Kaki has prepared a presentation for us. And so Kaki, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do I need to give you permission to screen share?
It looks like I can do it.
Okay.
That just assumes that I'll know how to do it, actually physically know how to do it. Let's see. Tell me what you can see.
We can see your slideshow.
Oh my gosh, that's
It's,
amazing.
It's not in, there you go, just, it's
I'm
not in
working
the, it's not in the slideshow format, but
There we go.
there you go.
So I have a senior dog who has a little bit of dementia who's in the room with me, and she thinks it's time for dinner like just after noon. So if you hear whining, please know that it's a dog and not a child begging in the background. Okay, so we looked at one of the things that we've of course been negotiating around data for CPMT for the last several years is what data we should look at and what do we want to look at. And we decided that there was two sets of data. One, it was data that we had to look at every year. We had to write that down, I think last year, maybe the year before, and agree to OCS, yes, we will look at this data every year. And then there was also contextual data that we thought was good for us to know. And so we're separating those out, and this is the required data. So I have looked at, this is all data that is collected, reported by the localities directly to OCS. And so for some data points, there's 2020 data available, and for other points, there are not, other sort of metrics there are not. But for total number of children served, we have 4 years of the data available. You can see that from 2017 to 2020, there's been a decrease in total number of kids served for Albemarle, and there's been a decrease starting in 2018 for Charlottesville, a pretty steep decrease if you look at 433 kids in 2018 for Charlottesville and just 283 for 2020. Then we look at the, these are all metrics that are reported through CAN. So these are the reports that folks fill out at various points. I actually don't know how many times they fill it out. It's not just pre and post. There's something in between. There's an updated report, right?
I think it's either every 3 months or every 6 months, right, Jennifer?
That workers complete the cans.
Yeah.
We only require it once a year now.
Oh boy, I'm not up to date.
They do have to do it every 3 months for Medicaid.
Right.
So these are generally tools that are looking for, you're seeking a decrease. So a score, the higher the score, the higher the need is, just in terms of looking at the data points. So all of these data points are available for 2017, 18, and 19. And I've listed the states so you can see how it is that we perform based on the average scores for the state. So this is actually one of the few domains where we, where both localities don't do better than the state average. And in general, we do. In this case, Charlottesville falls just below the state's average, and Albemarle most recently as well in the school area.
Kaki, could you share again with me what CANS means in a layman's terms?
No, I cannot, Lori, but there are smarter people than me who are here who can.
Lori, it's the Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths Assessment. Code says we have to do an assessment for every kid receiving CSA funding, and that's the assessment that the state chose.
So this is just that so basically what we're doing better than the state is we're assessing better or more?
It means that the services that are in place related to school needs, emotional needs, those kinds of needs, or improving sort of basic strengths for the kids, those things are working. And presumably if kids are in our care, we expect the services that we assign that will be effective. So we're looking for changes based on improvements in their performance. And it's a sort of a way for us to also back into whether the services we're using are effective or not.
So this is an effectiveness tool, basically. How effective are we?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
One thing that I think probably skews some of this though is I do probably 26 cans a year for the kids who are at VIA. And the changes from year to year for those kids are so minute for so many of them that I wonder if that's skewing the data.
Yeah, I think we're going to see there'll be some kids in here whose needs are so intense that the sort of shifts are not going to be dramatic.
Right.
And for others, they'll be more dramatic. And so I think, you know, this is one of those things we want to look to trends to see if there's a big change one year over another, good or bad, so that we might then investigate how that change happened. And I think, you know, I mean, that there's been a lot of conversation about the sort of meaningfulness of the cans, just sort of in general. So I think this is one metric that we can look at. It's probably not a metric that should be used alone as a decision-making tool for CPMT or any one of the localities. It's just one of many. And you'll see there's actually an aggregate score. Last year they didn't do this, but this year there's an aggregate score that they've given us that sort of combines all of the metrics together in a score that they give us. And it's just additional information. We shouldn't hang our hat solely on this.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Thanks.
The other piece is that, remember, workers complete this.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's not going to give us a lot of rater reliability, you know, because workers, you know, will view things differently. So.
And which is part of why we're also seeking additional reports directly from providers, so that we can have some more qualitative information that we might inform more sort of micro changes in our approach by locality. But again, we're required to look at these things because they told us to, and we wrote it down. So here we are. So we looked at the school. Are there any questions about the school domain? Did I skip? Did I go past the emotional needs? There we go. So if you look at, again, looking for decreases in the scores around behavioral emotional needs, and you can see in this situation, both localities outperform the state average pretty handily and pretty consistently. And if you look at, this is the one that always bothers me, that it's called child strengths domain, but you're still looking for a decrease in the score. I want it to go the other way around, like an increase in the number of strengths, but I have to go back and read it several times. But this is also a situation where we handily outperform the rest of the state, and pretty consistently for both localities from year to year. And there are a number of these where the state has assigned a target so that people can understand what we're trying to reach. There are some we're just measuring a change from A to B in terms of timing. And for others, we're trying to reach a target. And this is one where they're assigning a target for % of youth receiving intensive case coordination against those in residential target. The assumption being intensive case coordination is a good thing and should have a positive impact, and that 75% should be receiving intensive case coordination. You can see that this is another situation where we outperform the state. The state has not, since they've been sort of identified this target, been able to meet this target expectation, but most of the time, locally, we are.
So what are they defining as intensive case coordination?
So they have a little definition for it. I'm afraid while I'm screen sharing to go to the OCS website, but maybe somebody will.
I wonder if it's supposed to be intensive care coordination.
They say case coordination on the thing, but maybe they do mean.
My understanding they do mean ICC.
ICC, yeah. So they refer to it as ICC. It's only in their little breakout that they have put an S instead of an R. Okay.
But I guess I'm confused about the numbers then, like what they actually represent.
Well, and I'm wondering how, this gets reported. I think all of the kids the city has placed through Region 10 would get ICC, but I don't know that every kid who's placed in residential through DSS would get ICC. And so I don't know if you know, if they're talking about the parental agreement placements, or they're talking about the foster care residential placements, or if they're talking about both, sorry. Because I think if they're just looking at the parental agreement cases, the 100 makes sense.
So this number reflects the percentage of all the youth that are currently in a residential placement, the percentage of that number that are also receiving ICC?
Yes.
That's what this means?
Yes.
But the thing is, you can't bill ICC during the whole course of residential. So I guess, yeah, I'm still wondering how they're capturing it. If these are kids that have received it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's at any point during the year or point in time or ever.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah, that's
the little breakout on the OCS website says case coordination instead of care coordination. I don't know that I would trust a whole lot more about what they say, but they don't make the distinction about what they mean by residential. So I'm sure it's somewhere and we can dig around for it. But do you know, Jennifer and Katie, do you know how this is reported? Is it through us? Like, do we report, or is it through the localities?
I mean, I would imagine it's through the locality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we report kids' mandate types. And especially with the standardized service names now, ICC is its own standardized service name, so it gets reported separately. And so I don't know if they're able to like pair up the placement with the kid with their ICC, seeing that they have ICC as well. That's would be my guess of how they're doing this. That's why I wondered how it's getting, I'm not really sure about how it's getting reported. And again, I think this might be they were in residential and received ICC at some point during a year. So they, not that they received ICC the whole time they were in residential maybe, but they received it at some point that year.
I'll do some digging on the OCS website and see if I can find some clarity and send it out as well. No guarantees, but I'll try. And then this is like a percent of youth receiving community-based services out of all CSA youth. So the assumption here being community-based services are good for kids and, again, parentheses, cheaper than other options, I think is also part of the instinct here. And so they want us to keep track of this. And you can see that we outperform the state pretty handily in this category pretty consistently as well.
Do you know if this includes like a kid in foster care where the parents are receiving the community-based services? Would those kids be counted in this?
I believe so.
Yeah. I think so too.
It seems odd to think that we wouldn't have every single, well, I guess.
If you have a kid who's like in a calf home and just getting daycare, like that wouldn't necessarily count because daycare would be a maintenance payment and then they have their placement.
But you think that the parents would be receiving a community-based service?
Yeah.
I guess maybe our special education placements, there may or may not be another community-based service.
The assumption being that the placement is the comprehensive set of services already. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if the special education kids are included in that count.
I think so, because it specifies all CSA youth, but I'll check that out too.
That would make sense.
I mean, that would explain why it's not 100%.
Right.
Because or I guess in a sibling group, if one of the kids is just getting a CAF and a placement in daycare, but the services to the parents are under the other kids, other siblings' name.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then percent of youth in foster care placed in family-based settings. So this target is 85%. And you can see the state has not reached that target. And certainly for 18 and 19, we've handily met it. And we're pretty close for at least Albemarle in 2017 and handily in Charlottesville. So we're certainly, when you look at some of the numbers across the state, just looking at other counties, it's pretty dramatic how low those numbers can go for other community settings. So we do well by that. And we have a strong local focus on kinship as well. And then this is the strange composite score. So you can see, I have no idea whether they're all weighted exactly the same. I don't know if this is good to go up or down. Like there's no explanation for it at all for OCS, but I thought for kicks, I would share it with you. So there you go, for whatever that's worth.
I think you skipped over a slide. There was one. Yeah, that one.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, thank you. This is a pretty critical one. It says 5, but I meant percent of youth in foster care who exit the permanent living arrangement. This is obviously pretty critical to our successes of both system and individual services. The state's target is 86%. You can see the state has never met that target, and that only one time in Albemarle in 2017 was able to meet that target. So we know it's a good target because it's hard to reach. And so something for us to just pay attention to, particularly as numbers start to go down a little bit. It's interesting that the percent of youth in foster care who exit a permanent living arrangement, we're meeting the percentage is lower over the last couple of years, when in fact our caseloads are also lower. You might think they might be related, but maybe it's we have fewer cases and they're harder. I don't know.
Excuse me, what is a permanent living arrangement by definition?
It's either the child has left foster care and returned home to their family, or the child has left foster care and been adopted.
Okay. Or
the child has left foster care and gone into the custody of another relative. So it's the reason you want to do well with this is because you don't want kids lingering in foster care.
And would independent living qualify for that?
I don't think so. Jenny, is Jenny still on the call? I don't think the kids that age out and go into fostering futures are considered having exited to a permanent living arrangement. I think it's only adoption, transfer of custody to a relative, and return home.
So that's within like the same year. So basically, you have a kid in foster care who's 12 or 13, and then they go back home with their regular family. That would count as a positive number here, right? Mm-hmm. So it's within that year, I guess. Because in my mind, when I first looked at it, I thought it was like exiting foster care almost as the aging out piece. But this is for children that just any time in the year they get moved to a permanent situation out of foster care.
Right. Yeah, the goal is to shorten the time they are in foster care. So you want to get them out, and so it's considered a failure, if you will, if a kid stays in foster care and ages out.
Okay.
So one of the thinking about exits to permanent living arrangement and then looking at length of stay are two pretty critical sort of process metrics for us to pay attention to. And so you can see, I will say that I found that there's a number of different numbers based on the reports, all of which say that they're reporting average length of stay, and they're not the same. So that was distressing to me in the OCS reports. And so if you look at Albemarle and you look, there's two different reports that report on, one is like maybe the demographics page, there's another that's by service mandate type, and they have slightly different numbers for length of stay. And so it's just something to pay attention to particularly for me, as I'm going back and trying to look year over year to make sure I'm looking in the same spot for comparison purposes. They're not hugely off, but it's significant enough.
Is there a state average?
There is not a state average listed for this. I'm sure that I could get it if I did the math for all of the possible reports, but I could not. There's no state average.
Okay. All right. I just was curious.
I would be curious about that too.
Yeah.
So is it length of stay? Is that like length of time that any youth is in any type of service, or is it foster care, or is it a residential?
This is an average of all service. And so if you can, we can do a separate sort of slide that looks at length of stay for any kind of residential or any kind of foster care. I would need some guidance about how to lump those things because there's some nuances about the reporting that I'm sure Katie and Jennifer can help me with that. But this is for everybody. Thanks for that clarity. Yeah. And then, because everybody's favorite, how much money per child do we spend? And is it related to any of the other metrics we keep, like community-based services or length of stay or exits to permanency? And you can see that then I would say Charlottesville's got a pretty flat line. Interestingly, it doesn't, but that Albemarle's has been, well, I guess they're both pretty flattish. Anyway,
That's a technical term, flattish.
flattish. That's right. It's pretty important. I'm glad that you brought it up. We can bring some definitions for flattish next time. So I shared this with Lisa, so she can send it out to you all so you can watch it again and again, maybe with your families on the big screen, like those kinds of things. But I will follow up on some of those nuanced questions. And then the next time we come together looking at data for the year, hopefully will be the more contextual data. I think it'll all be sort of COVID related, to be perfectly honest at this point, but that's the sort of big context that we're living in. But anyway, I'm happy to answer questions or present the data differently if you like as well. So let me know.
It's interesting to me on some of the measures that where there was a pretty big difference between the city and the county. And yet, you know, we have same service provider community. It just, it's interesting. It would be nice to know a little bit more about that. I'm not sure how to get to that.
And whether that difference has been consistent over time. I think, you know, when you're looking at these pieces of data, you know, as you've seen, they don't feel particularly like meaningful unless you're really trying to track a trend and then being able to look and for changes in the dynamic over time, either compared to each other or in relationship to the state targets. And so, you know, I guess the spreadsheet only went back to 2017 that they offer, but maybe there are other ways to get to previous year's data, but look at big long-term trends.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for doing that. Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I just have a question. You know, I love data, as you can tell by my too many questions. But is there data here from those of you that work, you know, so close to this? Is there any data in there that you saw that you're like, oh man, we should target this one and we should set ourselves a goal for next year? Did anything jump out at anyone in that way, or is it more just interesting, or is there something that's compelling?
Well, for me, I would have liked to see. I'd like to see higher numbers in terms of kids exiting into permanent placement, and I was surprised that the number was as low as it was, at least for Albemarle, because and so that's why I'm wondering if in the foster care world, if it's really the kids that are aging out and they go into fostering futures, but because I know we have record number of adoptions and you know, I hear about kids returning home, but So I would just like to know a little bit more about that.
Hi, this is Jenny Jones. I agree with you, Phyllis. Sorry, I tried to talk before, but I couldn't get myself off the mute for some reason quick enough. But I do wonder too I wonder about the timeline and how they're measuring the exit to permanency. So I do know that we don't, even though a child is adopted, are they looking at our timeline? And so is it like if we're not adopting within 24 months or anything like that? I was just wondering how the timeline fit into the exit to permanency. And the children that are aging out, I don't think that they would count because you cannot have an IL goal anymore. So I would think, those children, are over 18. So I don't know that I don't think they would count in this anymore, Phyllis.
Okay. I think your point about the timeline is well taken. I've long said that there's no way that I want to make the federal target of reunification, because that would tell me we're returning kids too soon, And so
yeah,
I've said that for even when I supervised foster care. And because, we really provide very robust service packages and really want to make sure that when we do return the kids home, it's safe and they're ready, And it's just really impossible to do that within whatever it is, 12 months, particularly if it's a substance abusing parent. The treatment itself takes longer than that. Yeah, so a lot of it's interesting because because this isn't data that we've put together. It raises a lot of questions because we don't know how they're defining it or calculating it.
But also to answer your question, this is also data that we look at and that we're provided through like safe measures and things like that. Very similarly. So yes, it's definitely interesting and we have questions, but it's also something that we are already monitoring.
Good point. Any other comments or questions about the data or anything we want to pursue or think more about? I think it really is good as a CPMT to do this on a regular basis. This kind of sort of keeps us aware of how the system is performing, really.
Particularly related to the state's targets, I think often local government does this too, but state government, federal government will set a target as like an aspirational thing for some period of time, and then that achievement towards the target will be connected to funding somehow at some point. So I think it's wise to pay particular attention to those things, particularly when and if we're missing the mark, because at some point that might be used as not just an incentive driving tool, but a punitive measure. But I have not heard that, and neither has anyone else. I'm just saying that it's something for us to pay attention.
Good point. All right, well, if there's no other feedback or comment about that, do we have any other business from CPMT or agency updates?
This is Erin. I have one. People may have heard this at the Yancey Community Center starting tomorrow. Once a month on the third Thursday, we will have an annex from here. So it's the Yancey Community Health Center. So it's the health department having a clinic there, family planning, STI. It eventually will spread out more by appointment only, but the third Thursday of every month, that starts tomorrow. So tomorrow we have our inaugural day there. So everybody wish us luck. But I just want to let you know that it's out there and hopefully serves people who may not always get to the Charlottesville area, or people from Fluvanna or the Nelson piece, but just to say, just want to let you know it's starting.
Thanks, Erin. Anybody else have anything they want to share? All right, well, thank you very much for all being here. Thank you again, Khaki, for pulling together that information. And again, Lisa will send out the PowerPoint to you all so you can, again, watch it with your families as Khaki suggests. All right, well, we'll see you all next month. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.